The series I'm going to be talking about today is the Sebastian St series by C.S. Harris. The Sebastian St series is basically set in Regency, England. Now, the moment you hear the words Regency, England, what really comes to mind is Georgette Heyer. And it's a very rosy picture of England in that time and era, which makes sense because Heyer's novels are really about the aristocracy. And the men in those stories are basically white, titled, upper-class men. Even if they don't have a fortune, they still might have a title. And they have access to all the channels of privilege that were open to men of their description at that time. So obviously, if you have access to that kind of privilege, life is going to be really good. But in actual fact, 19th century England, especially during the Regency, it was a time of great political turmoil. You get slight hints of it, as dining table conversation in Heyer novels, but you don't really get to live what it might have been like for the ordinary people in England at the time. Mostly, Heyer is more invested in giving you a romanticized view of England at the time. And that makes sense because she's writing romances. Sebastian St is also a titled upper-class English gentleman. However, the novels, not so much in the first couple of books, but as the novels go on, they begin to really peel back the layers of romanticism that we might have for the period. And it gives you a really good close look at what it meant to live in England at the time for women, for men who didn't have access to title and fortune, and for children. When we talk about empire, we kind of forget that the word empire sort of gives the game away. It's really for the benefit of the emperor, not for the foot soldiers. But before I get carried away, I should point out that this is a historical murder mystery series. So the main point of the books is not sociological commentary. It's basically the solving of a murder that plays into the sociological situation in England at the time. The name of the first book is What Angels Fear, and there's nothing wrong with you starting the series with that. It's fine. It's just based on my personal preference in that it's a very good book. And actually, I started reading with What Angels Fear, and it hooked me enough to keep me going back to the series until I fully committed to it with Where Serpents Lie. But the reason why I would suggest that you go back to the first few books after you read Where Serpents Lie is because the first few books is really about Sebastian's confused emotional state about his love life, about his parentage, and I don't really have a lot of patience for forbidden love and torture, emotional torture. It's not my game. I don't care for it. I'm dead and cold inside. But in Where Serpents Lie, what happens is that Sebastian comes closer to a woman that we have seen in previous novels, a woman called Hero. Hero is a very privileged young lady. She comes from the upper classes. Her father is a cousin to the king. And she is what we might call today a social justice warrior. But in a way, she goes out into the seedy underbelly of London and she tries to help as much as she can. And it's not anachronistic in any way. It's not like she's doing things that a woman of her status and her background would not do in Regency England. But it is mainly through Hero that we see what London is really like and what it's really like for the lower classes in London. Starting from Where Serpents Lie, what happens is that the storylines are sort of evenly divided between Sebastian St and Hero, and Sebastian and Hero live, or they occupy, very different worlds. In that he is a man in 19th century England and she's a woman, and they're both upper class, but they they move in very different orbits, and Hero actually moves out of her orbit to explore issues that a woman of her stature would not necessarily view from up close the way she does. So a lot of the emotional heft of the novel, starting from Where Serpents Lie, actually comes from Hero and her explorations of London and, you know, the larger world in which she and Sebastian live. So my advice would be that you pick up Where Serpents Sleep and you see if you like that. And if you do, then you can finish the rest of the series and then go back to the first few and get more information about Sebastian's past. And I think that would also help you with a couple of things that irritate other readers of the series, which is in the first few books, there's a big deal made out of Sebastian's parentage and about how he is trying to find out more information. And then it just sort of peters out. Like, what is the point? But if you start halfway down the series, then you can focus on other things, and that really works out, in my opinion. Also, the series does get really dark in later books. So the first couple of Hero and Sebastian novels where they become a couple, that's a good indication of the direction in which the books are headed. I know a lot of people who pick up historicals or historical murder mysteries with a romance element. They're not particularly looking for that kind of stuff. They want something a bit more light and frothy. And Sebastian St is not light and frothy. But what he is and what the series is very, very good. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.